Just going to give some quick thoughts and opinions on the new iPhone 14 Pro Max. I got this phone on launch day, upgrading from an iPhone 13 Pro Max. There's plenty of unboxing videos and reviews on the phone, so this is just going to be some quick thoughts from me and just sort of my reasons for upgrading and my experience with it in the 2 weeks that I've had it so far. Some of the biggest features that have come to this phone this year, one is the Dynamic Island. The Dynamic Island has been pretty useful, and it hasn't. There's some neat functionality to it. I like Apple's approach of trying to integrate software with the hardware that obviously is limited by what they have on the phone. In this case, the Face ID sensor and the camera. The software side of it is actually really good. But when using an app, if you swipe up and minimize it, depending on the application, things like music, maps, things like that, will actually go into the Dynamic Island and sort of sit there as like a quick access. And then you can sort of press and hold on it, say if you're in your music tab, and access your music controls rather than pull up your app again. And it also supports dual apps simultaneously. So the one thing that Apple showcased plenty during their presentation of it was music and a timer. So the timer sort of splits off from the Dynamic Island from the music, giving a little circle for the timer and then another portion for the music. So then you can sort of access both at the same time. So they're more of like quick toggles. But I do like Apple's implementation of sort of embracing that around the hardware. Now, what I don't like about it, because they've redesigned the Dynamic Island, the whole system now has come down a bit from the top of the screen. So as before, you had a notch that sort of blended into the bezels. Now you just have this oval that's at the very top of your screen. And it basically is giving you some dead pixel space at the top. I say dead pixel space. Yes, images will show up behind it, but there's really no use case for that. I almost would have rather them kept the notch idea and maybe implemented the software around that. I do get though that it's probably visually more impressive to have the island itself and have the software operate around that. As to this point, I haven't found it something that I would go out of my way to upgrade for. There's been a few times in using it that it's really nice to have that sort of quick access to. But some people have been making it out that this is like some great feature. It's not a bad feature. I just don't think it's anything great. You're really not missing out on a whole lot by not having the Dynamic Island. What I found it most useful for is actually in the car when I'm using maps. When you minimize the map application, whereas before you'd sort of have your notifications kind of come down, the Dynamic Island holds that map data and will show you a little arrow for your turn and things like that. That's been very helpful. And the music app, because I play my music in the car, oftentimes with a GPS going. So having a music or a maps up there is nice to have. The second feature is the always on display. A lot of people have not really cared much for Apple's implementation of it, which is basically just dimming the screen. I don't really have an opinion on that one way or the other. If you look at other videos, they've done some battery tests. iPhoneDo did a great test on it. It's not draining that much battery. It doesn't disturb me. I actually like the always on display. It's sort of nice to have your phone sitting out. And, for instance, right now it's just dimmed. And I have the weather background from my lock screen. And I have some weather widgets up there. And I can just take a glance down, take a look at my time, take a look at the weather conditions. And I don't need to touch the phone. So I don't mind that. And then Apple built in the features where, if it's in your pocket or it's face down on a table, the always on display goes off. So you're saving battery life at that point. I do wish Apple would give us a little bit more flexibility with it. So if you did want just a black screen, There's been some workarounds with focus modes that you can have a black screen. That just all seems a little unnecessary. So it would be nice to have some options from Apple to sort of customize that a little bit more. The biggest thing for me, and the reason that I like to upgrade, is the cameras. I think that's kind of the biggest thing at this point between update cycles is the camera. I think the cameras are usually the big reason to upgrade. For me, camera on the phone is something I always have in my pocket. So, the photo quality is pretty important to me. I'm not a photographer. I don't pretend to be, but I do like to take my photos. As far as the photos are concerned on this, there's not a huge difference, in all honesty, between my 13 Pro Max and the new 14 Pro Max. At least when you're just talking about regular 12 megapixel files. So even though the new iPhone with the 48 megapixel sensor is supposed to have the pixel binning, I don't see a huge difference in photo quality between the two. The real difference for me is when you are using the RAW for the full 48 megapixel image. In that case, there is a noticeable difference in detail that's retained in the photos. Now, the downside to that is, yes, your file sizes are much bigger when you're shooting in RAW. That's the only time Apple's really given you access to that 48 megapixel camera, is in RAW format. So for me, it's something I would use sparingly for maybe a really nice landscape shot or like a cityscape, something like that, where I want a lot of information retained in the photo. Then I would probably switch to RAW and keep that full resolution. But I have been pretty impressed with the cameras overall. The telephoto especially, there's a few other videos on YouTube that have been kind of comparing camera quality. And in my experience, the telephoto lens has been pretty improved as far as retaining detail. There's a noticeable improvement that I've seen in testing the 13 Pro Max with my 14 Pro. It definitely seems to be improved. It definitely is retaining a lot more detail. The other thing that I really do like is the 2x zoom option now, where they're basically cropping in from that 48 megapixel sensor to give you a 12 megapixel 2x zoom. Now you basically have a 0.5 from the ultra wide, your regular wide lens, a 2x zoom, and then a 3x zoom from the telephoto lens. That extra flexibility with that 2x zoom is really, really nice. I find myself using that a lot, and the picture quality is really, really great with it. I'm super happy with that. Apple did say they redesigned the flash on the new model. I haven't really tested out the flash. I don't use the flash a whole lot. The night mode has gotten so good that I just don't use the flash a lot. And on all honesty, it's become more of my flashlight than anything. The other nice improvement that I've noticed is the actual speaker quality on the new iPhone. Comparing it to my 13 Pro Max, the sound definitely seems improved. It seems a little bit fuller in the audio quality. It's definitely a noticeable improvement from my last phone. Apple also released the new color this year, which was their purple color. I was a little bit disappointed with that. So I had the Sierra Blue in the 13 Pro Max, and I really, 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 really liked that color. I know a lot of people liked the blue from the iPhone 12, but the Sierra Blue from the 13 for me was perfect. It matched the AirPods Pro Max. It matched my iMac. To me, I really like that like sky blue, Carolina blue color. Always been my favorite color. So I was disappointed that we didn't have that this year. To be honest, I've always gotten the black iPhones until the 13 when I got the Sierra Blue. So I thought in continuing that trend, I might try the purple this year. When I did pick this phone up in the Apple Store on launch day, I did play with one of the purple models, and I'm glad I didn't go with it. I saw somewhere somebody described it as Batman 1989, Tim Burton, Prince purple, and that's probably a good description of it. It's just not my style. Don't like purple. In lighting, though, it does almost give off sort of a blackish hue. In direct light, it does give off that Prince purple, is what I'm going to call it now. So I'm glad I did go with the black. I do like that Apple darkened up the black on the phone this year. So I know at this angle with the computer light screen kind of hitting it, it gives it that washed out graphite look again. But if you kind of tilt it a little bit in regular, normal lighting that's not too bright, it is definitely darker. And I do like that. as well as the camera lens backing is much darker. Really do like the darker color on this year's model. Overall, I'm glad I upgraded. The cameras are the biggest reason for me. Dynamic Island is nice. Nothing I would upgrade for. Honestly, if you're not a tech person, if you're not somebody that wants the latest and greatest, you're not missing out on much. You really aren't on this phone. It's much more of the same. Honestly, you're probably better off holding off till next year and hoping that Apple releases a model with USB-C or at least some sort of updated proprietary cable to give faster speeds. As far as upgrading is concerned, I find it, you are interested in getting a phone every year. Apple's trade-in value has been pretty good, and that's how I at least justify getting the new model. Their trade-in value last year was good, their trade-in value this year was good. And of course, the longer you wait to trade in, the more whatever product you have is going to depreciate. So for this year, it basically cut my the cost of a new phone in half. So for me, it's really more worthwhile just to upgrade every year, unless you're somebody that wants to hold on to your phone for multiple years, probably at least 3, 4, 5 years. Then it financially you're probably better to wait. But definitely upgrading every year, the trade-in value goes a long way. It also saves you the pressure of trying to sell your phone through a third-party service and risking getting scammed. So that's it. Just sort of a quick overview of the new iPhone 14 Pro and just some of my thoughts with it. Thanks for watching.